also don't have 23 hours of daylight.
We're like 22 and a half right now. It's not bad.
It's not bad. My wife was commenting about how it was still light at 8 o'clock at night last night. It made me think of you guys up there. Uh,
My uncle is here visiting, and the other day somebody said something about sleeping. How do you sleep or something? He's like, I close my eyes.
maybe the curtains a little bit, but especially your eyes. Yeah,
It's amazing though how I don't think a lot of people realize how much light comes through your eyelids.
that's what I hear. That's what I hear, and the people that wear the covers over their eyes to sleep say it really helps.
Yep.
I believe that they're probably right. Yeah.
Tight fitting blinds on our windows, and then I've mounted them more inset than the center in a little bit more, so they're a little bit tighter to the window frame, the actual
Uh-huh.
blank,
Exactly.
and that works fine. A little bit of light that comes around don't bother me, but I can sleep in the daylight at night because I've been here my whole life, so it's not a big
Yeah.
deal to me. But yeah, it's it's an interesting thing.
I I
I just
had
did I just did a job down in Seward with an attorney who flew in from Oregon at 11 o'clock at night the night before, and he showed up at 10 o'clock the next morning at the school we're working at, and he's just dragging, and I'm like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "I'm slept awake. I got here 11 o'clock last night." He says, I had no idea what time it was. It's still daylight. He goes, I get to the hotel, I lay down, it's still daylight. He's like, I can't sleep.
sure, sure. You all working on a school, are you?
Yeah, it's a mold project. It's not a radon project, but
Sure,
it's a big,
sure.
huge lawsuit against one of the school districts up here that they don't maintain their schools properly and they're all wet and moldy. And I'm gonna say probably that's what it's gonna turn out. But oh well.
Well, and part of the topic of the day possibly, but we need to find a way to make them a little bit more aware of the effects of radon. And
Mm-hmm.
I always did say I worked at a lot of people don't know this, but I worked at Illinois State University for 24 and a half years.
Oh,
And I always say I worked there 5 days a week and I spent the other 4 days doing radon because you had to feel like there were 9 days to do two jobs like that. But I always said, what we need to remember is a lot of the argument about any health effects is, well, the kids are only there during the school year. They're only there 8 days, 8 hours a day. What about the custodial staff, and
yep,
what about the teachers? And
yep.
so I always did argue by saying, are we trying to determine who's the most important here? Is that person that does
Yeah.
the custodial work or repairs the boilers, or that teacher less important than the person that's only there part of the time?
That
Uh,
makes sense. Yeah.
and the other half of the argument, once I was asked one time, a town not too far from me, uh, somehow or another, something happened and radon got identified, and the people in the community got all worked up, and there was some pretty mouthy type school board meetings. Why are you doing this unhealthy thing to my kids? And they said, would you come up here and talk to these folks? This has been some time ago. And I says, I'll be more than willing to come up and talk at your school board meeting, but you need to remember the first thing I'm going to say is you have no right to complain when that student is in this school 8 hours and in your house 16 hours a day, unless you've already tested your own home. So
Right.
how many of you have tested your own home? And that school superintendent says, I don't think we should have you come up here then, because I don't think that's going to help. And I'm like, well, what else would you want me to say?
You got to
Uh,
be honest.
Yes, and it's true. What? How could you sit there and say, "Well, I'm mad because the school is not safe for my child, but I'm okay. I'm not going to test at home."
Yep,
Uh,
you got to be honest. And so our schools here in Matsu did a radon test thing. They put out a bid for radon testing, and I use the EPRM system for
sure.
that kind of stuff because I can put hundreds of sets out. Literally, if you wanted to buy more and more and more. I don't have an electronic unit and everything. And I did in for that and everything else. And there was a local guy, no qualifications of any sort, but he is a contractor. So he put in to test the schools and won the bid. And then I requested the information on his bid. He bought all his test kits. He went down and bought cases of them, had a special order from Home Depot. And that's what he tested our school systems with. And I remember Doug Clatter, I think it is, right? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
Doug Clatter. I remember, I'd look at my radon book.
Sure.
Him telling us that if you ever use one of those types of tests that you buy from the hardware store,
Sure.
buy two, throw one under the seat of your car in the package, send one to the house, and then send them both to the lab and see what your results are. And he swears that you will get radon levels, if you have radon there, you will get radon levels in the package under the seat of your car driving around. Because now that was 20 years ago.
Yeah, sure.
But his claim was the radon penetrates the packaging, and the type of material that they use to put those tests in, the radon penetrates that.
Sure.
Those tests will read right out of the store in some cases.
When I hear that name, I always think it's kind of funny. He taught the very first class I went to, which is what, 26, 7 years ago. And so he's been around a while, that's for sure.
2003. That doesn't,
Sure.
doesn't radon and radon decay product measurement course from the course. What is it? Center for Environmental Research and Technology, Doug Clatter.
Sure. Sure. Been around,
2003.
yeah, he's been around the industry a long time, got quite a resume.
Yeah.
Today we're going to talk a little bit about, I think that really Father's Day weekend, we're going to make sure we get out of here for it, or at least this old boy needs to, with the plans going on in my family. But I don't know, Ben, you got everything ready to kind of do an opening remark?
Yeah, I've got no opening remark.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Wait. Ben, we're not doing big wins this week?
Well, we should. You know what? We should. We should absolutely do big wins this week. So, what do we got going on? Who's got big wins?
I got a
Jim.
big win. I got
Nice.
5 big wins.
Let's hear it.
Good.
Number one is, remember that audit you did on my website a couple weeks ago?
Absolutely.
And I was the 205 pound guy that wanted to get down to 200 pounds.
Okay.
I'm 200 pounds now. I fixed all of those things that we discussed on my website.
Awesome.
So I'm there.
Good. Glad to
And
hear it.
then we had a golf outing this week with our local real estate agents, and I got my wife to go down there. We sponsored a hole, and the very next day, due to her networking, we solved the problem. So that was good too.
Good.
It's always good to see some
Nice.
good response out of those things,
Yeah, I tell
And
you
I
what,
almost
sponsoring those things is a hit or miss. It feels like you either get 100 or you get nothing. So that's awesome.
Yeah, no, and I was almost about ready because my one gal that takes care of the phone, she had a sick child and she was supposed to do it and she couldn't do it. So I was almost about ready to just say, forget it. But I said, you already paid for it, Jimmy. I'll send somebody down. And I talked my wife into it and she did a great job.
Good.
And Jim, you're also this week, you're on the spot to tell everyone that I responded to your phone call in 10 seconds or less, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I left a voice message and I couldn't even hang up the phone before he was
Yeah.
calling me back.
I think I got it in under 45 minutes, but yeah, that was Jim made sure after a week of me talking about setting goals of you guys responding to your leads quickly, he left me a message right after the call, and I was doing my usually post-call get up and stretch, and that my stretch lasted longer than normal.
So, what else I got here? Oh, I made 2 pipeline. I picked up 2 new pipelines this week too. That should be sort of fruitful in the future. So I'm real pleased about that.
Nice.
And then on the personal side, tomorrow I'm running the Steamboat Classic, and which I haven't ran in a long time, that they talked me into, and that's at 7:00 in the morning. And then at 10:00, I race sailboats. So hopefully it'll be our first race of the year. So hopefully we do real good.
Well, the weather looks great, so you guys should have a great weekend for sure.
It should. So, but that's all. That's my update on me.
Nice. Anybody got any other big wins or stuff that's going on? We'd love to hear it.
I worked for attorneys all week, so I got nothing that's a win.
I did a building once for a group of environmental attorneys, and we're going to get off track real easily here, though. But I was so intimidated by this. It was a 3-story, 110-year-old building that was originally built as a Knights of Columbus building, and it had a 4-foot drop in one part of the lower level for a bowling alley. And in those days, the bowling alley actually had a guy sitting on a stool to reset the pins. But in other words, I was in a 110-year-old building that was 3 stories that had a 4-foot drop down area and built right on the river on terrible, terrible communicating soil. And it was just full of environmental attorneys. And I'm like, I'm a little intimidated here. As a matter of fact, I was so intimidated, my wife stopped me and says, wait a minute here. What's your problem? Why are you feeling intimidated? But anyway, it was a long story, but I think the funniest part of that story, not to get off track, was that at the end of the job, I feel like I got very, very lucky, and all the numbers were so low they were down around 1. And I'm not actually taking credit for that. I had sleepless nights over that job and was very fortunate to get numbers that low. But the attorneys held up the last $1,200 payment. So I called up the guy that was in charge of it, and I said, hey, I may have told this story, who knows, but I said, what's the problem? What's the problem with paying me the last $1,200? And he says, well, Dave, he says, we have a problem with the fact that we felt like we hired you to get the numbers below 4, but you must have done extra work to get them that low that we did not pay you for. and I says, look, you don't understand the way it works, but the fact that your numbers got down to 1 made me so happy. It was unbelievable, but the procedure was the same. And so, in other words, there you are with an environmental attorney group that doesn't want to pay you the last numbers that they owe you because their radon was so low they felt like you did too much work. So that's the world we live in, I guess.
Yeah.
But I had a couple comments about last week, and I thought it was just as a little bit of a recap. Ben talked about building your business and what you want to do. And I made a comment that first thing you got to do is look in the mirror. I have a lot of customers, and most of those customers certainly want to grow their business. But I also get the feeling that if you want to grow your business, you have to have a plan. So my statement was look in the mirror and be real honest with yourself and ask yourself, what do I want to do with this business? Do I truly want to grow it? And if I want to grow it, I need a game plan, but I don't need a game plan that I'm not going to follow. And so everybody needs to look in the mirror and say, what do I truly want to do with this business? And act accordingly. And I thought Ben made a great comment too. You can't drive a $80,000 pickup truck and then say, I don't have $300 to invest in a website item for my business. So in other words, it doesn't just take making that decision on what you want to do with your business. It takes using your head when you work with that. And I don't know if you had any more to say about that, Ben, but that was the extent of what I wanted to recap on last week.
I mean, for me, it's always the thought of, if you break your back, right, and you can't work, have you built a business that allows someone else to keep working and for you to keep making money? And we should all be looking at building your business to a point where you've got a foreman who you trust. You've got, a lot of times if you're physically injured, you can still pick up the phone, right? You can still take phone calls. You can still talk to customers. But we want to build something that gets you to a point where you're not necessarily out in the field. And if you are, it's because you love it. But there's always somebody that can take that place for you, that can step in and really, when we talked about on your list of things, if you want a vacation to be on your list of things, is your business still running while you're on vacation, right? So to me, that's a big deal as well. I want to know that I can go on vacation for a week or 2 or 3 weeks out of the year, and those 3 weeks are not lost revenue, especially if you've got guys working for you, that those guys they're out there. they're not getting complaints, right? They're doing the job right. You trust them with your business and your tools, and they're not going to drive away and, go sell your company truck. So yeah, I mean, those are all things we've got plenty of. We should do a week or two on just horror stories. That'll be fun. Everybody can.
I don't know about that.
I think it's always fun. I had a plumber friend who got a call from a customer who the one of his guys concealed carried, and he was working, so he took his handgun and just put it up on the counter and forgot it when he left. So just left a gun on the counter. And so when we talk about trusting your guys to work on their own, I suppose it's important that they don't do stuff like that. Have a simple conversation with your guys on what's acceptable. So yeah.
Well, if nobody else has any additions, we could use a lot of help this week, but I have a feeling we may go into 2 weeks with this for sure. And this has been something that has weighed heavily on my mind. And I think that we've talked a lot about how it all has to be positive. Many of you folks that call me personally know that I have some opinions, and that's all they are, is opinions. But I think that what we need to do is we need to all think about it's a very tough business. We talk about that. It's a tough business to survive in. A lot of people don't survive in it, but we need all the help we can get. All of us pay dues, and so I think that we certainly have the right to our opinions. What could happen that we think could benefit us or our position, and I want some input here, so I don't have to come up with all of it, but I think maybe a statement from Ben, because I've discussed before that Ben's not a mitigator, but Ben's been around Radon quite a while, representing me for several years. I don't know, probably more than 10 years. I don't add it up. But I'd like to hear Ben's opinion about what could happen to the industry, what change could happen to the industry that he thinks would benefit us the most. And then I'll chime in if no one else wants to. I have 3 or 4 things that I think are on the top of my list.
Well, I'm on the spot here.
You are, Ben. And if you don't want to, you can chime in later.
No, I mean, honestly, for me, I think the biggest thing is how do we get in front of consumers, right? January is supposed to be Radon Action Month, and in a decade, I don't think I've ever seen an advertisement in front of a YouTube video or on, during an NFL game that I'm watching in January. I guess playoff games probably be expensive to run those ads, but right, like to have a campaign that's going out to people that's actually educating them on the dangers of radon. I think that's a big deal, and obviously that's an expensive thing to do. So when you have, this is in every trade association, every trade, there's always things that you want to get in front of consumers, and it's easier when you have the National Association of Realtors has a massive amount of money. Well, they used to up until a few months ago, but they have money to run those ads, during the Super Bowl, right? And so, how do you get that information in front of consumers? It's obviously working with all the local environmental groups and all the And I don't know if it's grassroots, right? We've got our farmers market, and we've got our things here locally, the little festivals and things like that, having people passing stuff out so they understand what it is. I know that David, we talked about having, craniums at the local library, right? So that people could check those out and take them back. And, obviously testers aren't going to love that. It's not a real estate transaction, but it does give people the ability. I just had the cranium that I pass around is somebody just texted me back and said, "Hey, I'm ready to bring it back." I'm like, "Do you have a friend? Do you have a family member? Do you have so?" She's like, "Yeah, my mom wanted to know." I'm like, "Take it to your mom's. Take it to your mom's. You're now a radon expert because we've been dealing with this back and forth for 2 months now. You know all about it. You know what your level should be. You know what you're looking for. You know where the test should go. I said you are deputized to go out and test your mom's house or anybody else in your block, and this is somebody who was just went through treatments for breast cancer, and so this is on her mind, and she thought maybe her high radon level, and I gave her that. I'm like, no, that's probably not it, but let's not do a 1-2 punch on your body, right? So that's my thought is what does it take to get in front of consumers more? And yeah.
Well, it's funny. Not really funny, but my number one thing was along the same line, and I just ready to jot down a note about the end of what Ben said. We need to find a way to defeat the people saying, "Why didn't I know?" So, in other words, the people that it is too late for, or the people that have a relative that is too late for, or many situations, the number one comment, I guarantee you, is why didn't I know? Why wasn't I informed? We spoke a little bit last week about the pie charts, and they still surprise me to look at them. I just pulled 2 of the 3 out again right now, and the percentage of exposure to radiation that is caused from radon is just incredible. But some of these facts, for instance, I always said, why isn't there a poster along the highway that says, do you know that the major health organizations such as the Center for Disease Control or the American Lung Association and other health organizations tell you that secondhand smoke is more dangerous than anything other than smoking. It's the second leading cause of lung cancer. So I think that's a very important fact, because people don't associate. I'm sorry, that radon. Sorry, I got confused here. I had 2 subjects on my mind. That radon is more dangerous for your health than secondhand smoke. Nobody knows that. If I say that to anyone in this world, they say, "Oh, nah, that's got to be baloney. You can't. There's no way." We all know how dangerous secondhand smoke is. So I guess my point is there's plenty of things, for instance, that radon, even at the EPA pie chart I have in front of me, is rated at it's funny because it's at 1.3 picocuries per liter. The pie chart's made, and at 1.3 picocuries, that's a cured home. So it's still at 1.3 picocuries. It still says radon is 37% of your radiation exposure. We'll have to talk about that maybe later, but the fact that I'm trying to bring up is I had a couple plumbing house salesmen just stop in my facility the other day trying to sell me plumbing supplies for the manufacturing we do. And the first thing he said is he got in my face and he says, "Now, you don't really believe in this radon baloney, do you? Bullshit. You don't believe in this radon bullshit, do you?" And and all the years I've had that, if you've been around as long as me, it's less now than it used to be. But my general comment has something to do with, all of the health organizations that are important in this world say that it is very dangerous. So I have to believe in the World Health Organizations more than I believe in just a consumer. But there's all kinds of things. But the point of the matter is, our organization needs to get a lot better at getting the message out, because I'm convinced that this industry needs to be related to consumers' concern for their health, not real estate transactions. Every time you do a real estate transaction, it's not taken seriously. Most of the time when you do a real estate transaction, it's not taken seriously. The people that are serious about it are the people that are doing it for their own family. And the only reason they're doing it for their own family is they found a way to get educated. Well, most of the time, that education's available. All of us can find it, but most of the time, they've had to do the work of getting educated. Why can't we bring that to people instead of people having to go to the available services to get educated on their own? And there's too many people, as I said in the beginning of this, there's too many people that are still saying, okay, my mom's dying of lung cancer now. I just found I found out something called radon. I think it's spelled Radon. Surprisingly, there's still a lot of people don't know how to spell it. And now I'm finding out it's the leading cause of lung cancer if I'm not a smoker. It's worse for me than secondhand smoke. Why didn't somebody tell me this? Well, any of you got an answer for that? The answer is we have failed to bring the message to where it should be. There's still too many non-believers, and there's still too many people that simply have not gotten the message. So my number one thing is I wish that our organization from a national level on down put more emphasis, more money, and more time into figuring out how we could get the message across. I also spoke about how when I got in this business, at least in Illinois, I was told by the administration that 91% of the radon systems being installed were being installed during a real estate transaction. 91% of the people really didn't care enough about radon to do it for their health. They were doing it to sell their home. You're always working for somebody that doesn't want you to be there, so to speak. But that number, I believe, has went from 91% down to my estimate is around 70%. Why can't we get that to 50%? So in other words, let's do something to boost that number, because this is a health issue. It's not a real estate issue. It's a health issue. So why in the heck can't we get it to be a health issue? Why are we relying on the real estate industry to manipulate people into getting radon done? The truth of it is, if you truly had enough information in front of you that you couldn't argue about it, that told you that radon was more dangerous than secondhand smoke, you might say, I always say it's one or the other. It's either the husband or the wife. At least if you get one of the two, you're going to get it done. So if the wife says, you know what, I saw this thing on TV and I'm pretty concerned about it. I'm getting a test device. I've already ordered it off of Amazon today, and it'll be here tomorrow. So we need to do a better job of that. And I'd like to open the floor for anybody else. That was my number one thing of the 3 or 4 things that I would like to see the National Radon Organization that we all pay dues to. I'd like to see them put more emphasis on that than they are.
I'll say this,
right.
David.
Can I have an opinion?
Oh, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, there's a couple comments I wanted to make. First of all, I think in our state, Illinois, the state and the health department has done a great job with the video contest and the poster contest. They've been doing that for quite a while now. I don't know exactly how long, but as long as I've been in, they've been doing it for 14 years. And when I first started, I heard a lot of non-believers and a lot of people that don't believe, but now those children are now home buyers, and a real estate agent, people can't tell them it's not true because they learned it in school. So I don't think that we have that challenge. In fact, we worked on the bill last year at the Capitol for the tenant bill, and our first round pre-COVID, we had a bunch of non-believers and a lot of that didn't believe it was malarkey. And we come back 3 years later, and nobody said that to us at all. So I think the public is getting educated. And one of the best things that the state has done for us is allow these electronic monitors to be sold in the state. And truthfully, that's all I push anymore is electronic monitors, and just own it and then pass it along to your friends and neighbors and kids. And it usually turns into another job down the road, and it gives much better data than just a little 3-day sample. They're monitoring in real time, real hours. long term, which is really what we're after there, and it's educating them, and they're educating their friends and neighbors and stuff. So I do think things are much better than they used to be, and I do know for a fact that the National does want to do something national, but the problem is we can't find a speaker, we can't find a poster child that that had radon induced lung cancer that will actually work with us. We've approached some people about it, but the kind of money these celebrities want, we can't afford it. You know, we just don't have that kind of money.
One thing I was thinking while we were talking was that, you know, we see all over the last 30 years, 40 years, all the anti-smoking campaigns. Well, those have been paid for by Philip Morris, you know, so there's not a, you know, there's not a big radon, right, that we can go after that has deep pockets that we can extract money from in the same way that it's been forced to, you know, happen from, you know, from big tobacco. I wanted to say over on Facebook, Howie's over there. He said, you know, the way you get consumers informed is going after the National Building Code, get testers in all the homes, just like a smoke detector. That's how consumers they're going to get educated in radon. So I think that's a great idea too.
And the National does work with the building codes. I mean, they're constantly trying to get. I think there is something coming out in appendix or something like that. Last time I heard, but you know, I mean, they work really hard with a very limited budget, you know, to try to do it. And then one thing I do think that every mitigator, every measurement, every person can do is in January, your radon month through Midwest Ours. When you're a member, you get 30 slides for the month of January that you can actually use on your own social media to promote radon and awareness. That's all I got right now.
My comment is, you know, I've been in the industry, I don't know, 26 years, and the comments Jim is making were being made 26 years ago. So maybe there is no solution, but I sure feel like we need to go down another path then. If the national organization has no money, then let's find another avenue. In other words, why are we talking the same language we did 26 years ago, that we don't have any money to make people aware of something that's killing them? So
I mean, you guys are already paying you're paying per tag, you know, and that there's money, at least in Illinois, you're paying what, $50 a tag?
Yeah.
So, I mean, millions of dollars are collected in Illinois. Could there be something similar on a national level if you had everyone, you know, throwing in $10, $15, $20 per installation? That and you saw the fruits of that, right? It's not just an arbitrary amount of money that you're sending to the National Association. But you're right. I mean, to buy these ads to get in front of a lot of people, it's expensive, and so. Well,
I just I believe that you know, I'm another one that can complain about it, but not have the answers. But there's a lot of dues that go into the national organization. Ben, you made a good example of Illinois. There are 17,000 radon systems done. Their biggest year was over 18,000 tags sold at $50 a tag. Maybe Illinois, I have a lot of respect for the Illinois program. And as a matter of fact, I have a lot of respect for the Midwest Arts program that Jim is heavily involved in. And there's an example. I'm not sure that Illinois properly used that amount of money. Do the math, Ben.
900,000. 18,000 is $900,000. So
that would have bought some billboards along the interstate, I believe. But I have a lot of respect for the Illinois program. But for instance, the Midwest Arts program, if you want another example, they're working with the legislature. Now, I understand that with our dues, they're also trying to pay for a lobbyist, but they're working pretty heavily with the, Jim can talk about this a lot more than me, but they're working with the legislature and coming up with some some things that are in the forefront, things like renters' rights and things that are actually going to set the precedent. Illinois has always been good at setting the precedent for other states to follow. But I have a lot of respect for the people in the Midwest Arst and the administration people, because they're really thinking of a positive message. Well, there's a good example of a hard fought and a well thought out program to make
renters
radon awareness without a bunch of money.
No, he's on something. I'm looking at this online ranking system from a study in 2022 by American Lung Association for radon levels. I don't know if you ever seen that. 814 of 22. And it talks about radon levels like here in Alaska. I mean, we have areas that are averaging above 10. But our state mean average is 3.3. And I was trying to figure out how they did that. And then I looked at their areas tested. And this is stuff that realtors use against me. So back to the real estate thing, they'll bring this stuff up. They've only tested maybe not even a quarter of the state, maybe 15% is where they've done tests. 75, 80, 85% of the state hasn't even been looked at. I go down here to Illinois, you guys got 4.1 is your average indoor level, but you got 5 million something houses. We got 379,000 houses.
Yeah.
Huge difference. But I try to use these things as my promotion to people is, hey, look, we have high levels. And then they see the map and they're like, well, yeah, that's one little spot this big in a state that's this big.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely. And even as progressive as Illinois is, I've used to hear the comment, and Illinois had a real good program where all numbers were accessible to them, so they were able to make a better zone map. But I know that the director of the program that recently retired told me Southern Illinois, a little behind Central and Northern Illinois, and not near as many tests. And so therefore it indicated the numbers were lower, but he was convinced it wouldn't indicate that if they got a better example and a more tests to make a better description of what's going on. And so just like you say, it's tough. I'm not sure what the answer is to that, but
yeah, your Illinois has had 20.2 tests per 1,000 houses. We've had 2.6.
Yeah.
But I can't get the evidence. I can't get the written stuff to put on a screen, the graph. I can't get anything to get people visually interacted in the yes, radon is a problem.
Well, I think that one thing that you also need to look at is, I'm not in the middle of it, but I've been helping you guys out in Alaska for a little bit, and to me, I'm already seeing progress with awareness and activity. So in other words, are you seeing a lot more progress than you did a year ago?
There was a big jump about 4 or 5 years ago when the University of Alaska got some money and put out some advertisement for 3 months. It was 3 months worth of advertisement, and then it just
sure.
So Ron and Ron's not on here today. Ron and them became certified radon guys, and they've kind of promoted that, and that maybe has helped a little bit because there was nobody really, I mean, we got guys running around putting 24/7 bathroom fans in bathrooms and calling them radon systems. So,
Well, but you just made another great example 4 years ago when the University of Alaska got some money from the EPA, probably, but from somewhere, so they could start making radon awareness. There was a big boost.
There was.
That's exactly the point I was trying to make is my number one concern. Let's find some way. That's the best example that we could come up with. So you guys had a big boost 4.5 years ago because there was some money that was obviously used wisely.
It was.
To make that happen. Well, yeah, good example. So, and as I jokingly say, we need to make this 2 weeks because here we burned up 40 minutes of our time on the one subject. But I think that what I'm hoping that is during the week, somebody, some more of you have some comments to make or some suggestions.
Buenos días.
She was on something.
So,
Yeah. The Facebook page is where you're talking about, right? If you have comments, suggestions, go to the Facebook page.
well, Ben can answer that better than me.
Yeah, for sure. Facebook's a great place to continue the conversation. You can see you can see this particular video on there. It'll be at the top of the page, so you can throw in some comments in there, and yeah, that's a great place to add your information. And hey, Jim, if you want to talk again, I did just mute you, so I think you just didn't mute yourself when you're done. So, what's next, David?
Well,
you got 18 minutes.
Yeah. Well, just very quickly, things that I've referred to last week that were great things to help people change their mind were the pie charts that actually showed you the dangers of radon opposed to any other radiation exposure. And so that was just one example, but they are available on my website, I think Ben said, but I used to carry them into bids. So try to make non-believers a little bit more believing, because they're certainly made by accredited organizations. But now I'm gonna do a 180-degree turn from the number one item that I believe is awareness, so we can take the my estimate of 70% of the radon being done in our area is non-real estate related. I'd like to see that 50%. And the only way to do that is with awareness, and we have to get better at that. So now we're going to switch. I want to know why in the hell we can't put fans in basements. I want a real answer to that, and I'm not going to be satisfied with most answers. We put hot water heaters in basements for many, many years, and the most dangerous thing in the world, they used to rust out so bad, and they would rust out so bad that the flue chamber that was just held onto them with 3 metal prongs would fall away because the hot water heater below it would rust out. So we put dangerous hot water heaters in. We put the dangerous old-fashioned furnaces that were 60% efficient, that had carbon monoxide like crazy. My county, at least, this is what the electrical inspector said. Before they started requiring ground fault circuits on sump basins with sump pumps in them, there were 3 people in our county electrocuted from a flooded basement that they walked into because the sump pump circuit had got underwater. So in other words, how many things in a basement are more dangerous than a radon fan? How many people are going to die from a radon fan that the Fernco gets knocked loose by some? Who in the hell's going to knock a Fernco loose from and today's plastics are so superior to the old plastics. So I use the excuse that maybe this rule was made because the old plastics were thin, they cracked very easily. I always heard through the grapevine, oh, well, now if somebody throws something against this fan, it could cause extremely high radon in that basement. Okay, if that radon in your house was 6.8 and it goes to 300 because the fan gets knocked loose, it goes to 300 for a month before somebody finds it. Who gives a damn? It didn't kill you. It's gonna be found and fixed. So I wrote down some of the advantages I think that would happen if this industry was realistic about it and allowed fans to be installed in basements. Like Canada and Alaska does, what I mentioned. But anyway, first of all, I made the note about how many things like hot water heaters are much more dangerous. In the early days, we had to do a carbon monoxide test on every home we did after we installed a radon system, in case the thought was that maybe that radon system was pulling air from that basement through cracks or whatever, and it could affect the ability for a flue to work. And it was amazing to me how many marginal flues that I tested with smoke, how many were very, very marginal, where you had to put a flashlight on that smoke and then, but anyway, there's a lot of things more dangerous than a radon fan in the basement. But first of all, some of the reasons that radon fans should be allowed in basements, other than that, is first of all, we could make systems a little bit more affordable to the consumer. Less work to put it in the basement, little or no electrical needed. If we could make this product more affordable, it would be faster for us to do, so therefore making it more affordable in that respect also. So little or no electrical work, faster to do, better price for the consumer. Would that more life for the fan? You know, I'm not a fan manufacturer. I'm certainly a salesman of fans, but I can't help but believe a fan in a controlled atmosphere is going to give more life for that consumer. So there you go, another advantage for the consumer. And I'm a big believer. And the last state director always said, our number one thing is consumer. I don't care about mitigators near as much as I do consumers, and I agree with him. So I've just stated three things that would be a great advantage to the consumer between affordability and longevity, looks for that matter, easier for the mitigator to change fans when it's necessary. But I also think it's easier for the consumer to monitor. I think a consumer would also have a higher likelihood of knowing when that fan quit. If that fan's in an attic or outside, is the consumer that doesn't look at his manometer or the possible required alarm, which is another subject. But if the consumer doesn't look at them, they're not going to have a clue when that fan quits. But if that fan's in their basement and they're used to hearing that little hum every time they walk down the steps, there's a much better chance that the consumer will be more reactive to a bad fan. So that seems to be a very important subject with the National Radon Committee. So I think that's an important thing to consider. Will more people, the disadvantage is I used to always have the attitude, if we make radon systems too easy to make, will more do-it-yourselfers try to do it? And I'm like, I don't think so. I think if there are a few more that want to do their own because now it's a little bit easier to do, I think it'll be offset by the amount of people that now think they can afford to do radon because it's a few $100s less than it was last month because now the rules change. So I'm a full believer that where did this come from? Why in the hell aren't we allowed to put a fan in a basement? Much more attractive, much less money, a much better chance for the consumer to monitor it, a much better longevity, I'm thinking, for the consumer. So has anybody got any ideas why we shouldn't put a fan in the basement? Can anybody tell me? Because I'm having a lot of trouble understanding why we can't.
Question.
Yes.
Is it a building code or a local code for you, or is it the National Radon Association is saying you can't put them down there?
National Radon Association.
We don't follow that then.
I know Canada doesn't either, and we can get into the re-entrapment question too. But I would like to just keep the fan as a separate issue so we could. Why aren't we calling the National Committee and say, would you give us a good reason? Alaska is okay, Canada's okay. Give me a good reason why we're not okay.
That's interesting. We put the fan where the most practical, feasible place to put the fan is.
Correct.
Right. Whatever that is, basements, crawl spaces, attics, whatever. Well, we don't put them in attics, but.
And typically you don't need to have an electrician do a lot of expensive electricity because you've got it there. So you can do it more affordable and you can have a better product for the consumer to monitor, longer lasting product. There's just too many advantages to doing it. And I'm pretty upset with don't let me put it that way. Let me back up a little bit. I really want some clarification and definition. I want to know why I can't do it. I'm no longer a mitigator, but I certainly was for 26 years. And I wonder that more and more now because the reality is, as I said in the beginning of this conversation, it's a tough business. It's a tough business. So I think that there's two things that that this industry needs to do a better job of. And number one, we've already discussed, is somehow to find out awareness. We need everybody to know how dangerous radon is. And the second thing is, what can you do to make the mitigation companies have a little bit easier job, have a little bit better job? Because it's a tough business to survive in, and this would be one thing. I mean, think about you guys having to do all these fans outside or up in attics or on roofs. No crawl space, no basement. It can't be in or below a living space. That's the rule. So you couldn't even put them in a garage if it had living space above it.
Yeah.
So imagine how much work that would be in Alaska. So anyway, that's my number two thing, is I want a real answer. Tell me
here's
why.
Here's one that Howie mentioned. He said that from his understanding, when radon fans first became available, they weren't considered hermetically sealed. So, I mean, that's a legitimate answer, but obviously the technology has improved. Yeah. I mean, that all that air that's moving has to go somewhere, and it's clear it's coming out the pipe, you know? So
yeah. Yes. Well, very, very good. And I appreciate that input, because I believe when I first got into this industry was the end of that era where the radon fans were simply plastics weren't developed the way they are, neither were sealants. And I think that there was a pretty good chance that a radon fan could fall apart, so to speak. That's not possible anymore with today's plastics and today's caulks and glues and today's technology. Very, very unlikely. But by the same token, like I said before, at the same time the fans had a better chance of leakage, the hot water heaters were pieces of garbage that were rusting away in 5 years. And so but if we wanted to keep it simple, we could simply say that, you know, today's fans are so superior in every way to the old fans that needs to be reconsidered, because that's an old rule that may have made a little bit of sense back then, but it makes no sense now. So what are we going to do?
Honestly, we have all of Canada. We've got Alaska. This seems like a simple test. Like, let's put some radon tests next to the fans. I mean, literally right next to the fan. And if you had a sump pump there, you know, that's a huge source of radon. You could very easily prove that, you know, go in somewhere that's had a radon system for 5 years, that fan's been sitting there running for 5 years or 10 years, and just start getting some tests that are right next to it in the worst possible place in the basement. Should have the highest level, and see what your number is. Obviously you have a control on the other side of the basement, but
yeah. I'm sitting here looking at the state of Alaska radon DEC, and their picture is two of the old style, those round fans, right over the top of insulated concrete forms going out a wall. And I'll guarantee you that's either a basement or a crawl space.
Sure. And when you folks first came to me, you know, Ron said that we talked about the Canadian rule opposed to the United States rule. We also talked about the icing up and the things that can and will happen in Alaska to a higher degree. And I believe he talked to the state about some of it, but he made sure that they approved of the fan going in the basement. And I know Canada goes a step further with the the exhaust being not being concerned about re-entrapment, the exhaust being right out the band joist or wherever, and not having the vertical stack that will freeze up. Well, I don't want to complicate things, but I think that's a subject for another day. Do we really have any data on re-entrapment? Is this just hearsay? Is this something that's been thrown at us? I know years ago, and Ron and I showed Ron this whole study, but I did a study on 102 passive radon systems that I installed, and the effects of of a passive radon system with a cap on, cap off test. And it was a long drawn out all summer. I put a lot of devotion into this test, but the EPA said that they had some things to say about passive or skeletal radon systems and the value of them. And I think we all thought they were liars. And when I got done with this study, I realized that it was true, but they had no, to my knowledge, they had no study information for me to see. They must have come up with that deduction somehow. But in order to not get too far off track, I think maybe next week, I wouldn't mind talking a little bit about where in the hell's the information telling me that re-entrapment is a concern 10 feet away? Where did they come up with these parameters? And I asked a question once of a person that was pretty high in the organization, and he said there is no study. It was all done from sewer gas. So in other words, the thought was if a sewer gas coming out your roof wasn't at least 10 feet away from a window, there was a chance that you might smell sewer gas someday. So if the sewer vent, well, that's not good enough for me. So as I said, I don't want to complicate things too much, but I think we could talk a lot about the things we would like to see changed. And I would like the first thing to be, I want an answer. I think that we all pay our dues. Give me an answer. Give me an answer as to why I can't put a fan in a basement. And I'll accept it if there's some real reason why I can't. I just can't find that real reason.
Yeah. We follow boiler exhaust rules. We don't allow the radon exhaust. We only stick it out 6 inches out the wall. That's it. We dead end it right there. You don't put the bird screen over it. But we just say follow the rules for boilers. If carbon monoxide is determined not to come back in the house, more than likely the radon is not going to come back into the house. I mean, that's kind of where we're at with that. So if the boiler rule says your exhaust can't be within 10 feet of an opening, don't put the radon system within 10 feet of an opening.
Yes, but you don't have to have a vertical stack if you're 10 feet away.
Within that 10 feet?
Yes.
You would have to.
If you're 10 feet or more away from an opening, do you have to have a vertical stack?
Nope. 6 inches out the wall, because our stacks were freezing because the moist air in the winter. And then the first sunny day, all that ice would slide down the tack and wipe the fans out inside the
problem in Minnesota, big time. It's a problem in Illinois. It's a problem in Michigan. All my customers have all these phone calls in the wintertime, and I've had a lot of discussions about the icing up, and it's opposed to the alarm, for instance, and the alarm indicates an icing up problem too because it's a pressure alarm.
Low.
And I'm like, my director told me an alarm is supposed to be something that's actionable. A hard word for me to say, but is an iced over pipe an actionable problem? Hell no. You can get a long ladder when it's 10 below zero and climb up there and chip the ice off, and then you got to come back the next day and do it again. So icing over is not actionable, but if you don't have that stack, you typically don't have the problem. But once again, that's third or fourth on my list. But I want an answer on fans in basements first. Mm-hmm. And I hope everybody here agrees with me. It may be that I'll accept the answer if the answer makes sense. Hell, I'm just a guy with opinions. So if my opinion is not the acceptable opinion, then I'll accept that. But I would like for all of us that are in on this, and all of us are going to get in on it later in the week or whatever, do a little thinking about that and see if you have anything in your thinking about the industry that would argue for leaving fans outside opposed to in the basement. I can't come up with anything. There's too many advantages to putting in the basement, and the biggest advantages are for the consumers. Remember, I'm not going to get too repetitive, but number one, the consumer has a lot better chance of monitoring that fan if it's in their basement. Number two, it's less expensive for the mitigator to install the system for the consumer, a better value for the consumer. And number three, I believe the fan has a chance of lasting longer, therefore saving the consumer money also, because if the fan goes out after, say, the 5-year warranty, it's all up to the consumer anyway. But what if we could say, okay, that fan life of this particular fan averages is 9.5 years, but boy, if you put it indoors, that goes to 11 years. That's a pretty good deal for the consumer. And so every way I look at the consumer, I believe there's a benefit.
What is the lifespan of the older fans?
That's a hard thing to determine. There's been a lot of changes, a lot of improvements, it's a pretty hard thing to figure.
I just looked at one the other day. It's that old square gray box that goes on the outside of the house. It's about a 1.5 foot square box with a fan system in it.
Uh-huh.
Ah, man, where's my picture of what it was? And they asked me about it. That thing's got to be 20, 25 years old. I never thought about lifespan.
Possible. They're all electronic now.
I'll find the picture and put it up on the Facebook page.
Yeah. Well, I think we've about hit the end of the road. I have 3 other things that I believe that I would cover, but I think that we've done a pretty good job here talking about what I believe to be the 2 most important things. One of them to get more consumers aware of the danger of radon in some method, and
one of those Famtech.
Yeah. I don't know if they were around that long, but that fan's been around quite a while. So has anybody else got any comments either about how we can get consumers? We got to get off of the rocking horse on this discussion about making consumers aware of the dangers of radon. It's our responsibility. And as I said earlier, it seems to me that I've been hearing the same argument for 26 years plus, that we don't have the money to do it, or we can't afford this person or that person. Let's come up with some creative ideas. And in today's world, I mean, Ben can answer to this. In today's world, you have so many ways to communicate that cost so much less. It's time that should the national organization find some kind of an expert they could hire that would lead us to some affordable ways to make people aware. There's a lot of facts that we keep throwing out. The radiation exposure is just incredible. The fact that I always used to go to, when I did a real estate presentation, there's a lot of non-believers in those, especially in the old days, but I would say now my wife is so concerned about secondhand smoke that if somebody's smoking on a sidewalk, she takes my little girls across the street and goes on the other side of the street a block so that they don't have to walk anywhere near that secondhand smoke. And I respect the heck out of that. But do you know that radon is more dangerous to your health than secondhand smoke? And the realtors would all look at you like, no way, no way. And all I'd have to do is show them a credible study that proves that. Well, I guess there's all kinds of things out there that the consumers would take serious if we could get it to them. And there's a lot of ways to do it. Maybe in today's world, it wouldn't take the commitment of money, just more of a commitment of creativity. So if you guys don't mind, and women don't mind, would you take a little bit of time this week and think about making consumers aware? And the second subject we covered was anybody come up with any ideas why fans shouldn't be in basements? I know the guys in Alaska don't have to worry about it, but we sure do down here.
And you said that would be the National Radon Association is the ones that you would promote that to?
Yes. Yeah, the National Radon Committee would have to, it used to be called ARST, it's got a new name, but they would have to approve of a rule change in order to allow that to happen. It would be a pretty big rule change, but it'd be to the benefit of every mitigator. And that every dues paying mitigator and every consumer that's considering a radon system would have a benefit. So in my opinion, it's a win-win. So I don't care how much work it takes. I don't care what it takes to change the rule. That's what you're there for. Do it for us, because there's too many positives to doing it. And if the reasoning is that the old fans had more of a chance of falling apart or breaking or whatever, then that should be defeated by the fact that the new fans have little or no chance of that. You've installed enough fans that, can you imagine one of them coming apart?
No.
It's just.
Well, and if they're leaking inside the house, would you fail a post test?
Yeah, I mean,
You would think.
fact of the matter is, especially if you had a corinium or a radon eye, you would know very quickly. But I still say the identification of a non-working fan would be a great advantage too, because much easier to identify if it's at the base of the steps that you walk down, that you every time you walk down them steps, you hear this whooshing sound until you get half used to it. And then the day you walk down the steps and you don't hear it, it's like an alarm, so to speak. So just not to get too repetitive, there's just too many advantages to putting a fan in the basement. And I hope that we got a pretty good participation here, and I hope we have enough participation that we get some input from the national committee. I'll gladly let any of them come and speak and tell me why we shouldn't be able to do it.
I'll get our section chief for our radon for Alaska is Jennifer. I talked to her a lot. I'll do up a letter, send it to her and say, will you sign this, and mail it to whoever we need to mail it to, that explains our modifications and why.
Sure.
And if they work perfectly fine, we've never had a problem.
Sure. And once again, all my information secondhand, but I've also heard that the Canada has done their research on re-entrapment, and their belief is the re-entrapment rules or the re-entrapment standards that we follow simply aren't correct. And I will accept any of that if somebody can legitimately give me that information. I'm not that hard-headed. I believe I'm right.
I think
But I'll gladly admit I'm wrong if somebody can prove it. So, but anyway, Ben, you got something you want to close with? You probably fell asleep, Ben.
No, I'm here. No, I think we scratched some surfaces here, and I think obviously everybody that goes into mitigation doesn't realize that they're also going to be obligated to become an advocate and be obligated to doing outreach, and that's good business building as well, right? Because not only are we saving lives, but also getting out in front of people, and it's going to drive more business. People who sell fans probably aren't going to benefit from fans lasting longer, but that's okay. I'm okay if they lose a little money. No, but again, it just means it means we're getting into more homes, and it's just when we start talking about getting in front of national code, national radon, that kind of stuff. It's these conversations should obviously be happening. So
we all benefit if more radon systems are installed. In other words, that was a joke. I know that, Ben, but everybody from the radon fan distributor to the mitigator to the consumer. Once again, I'm going to stress consumer from here to the eternity, but all three people benefit from doing more radon systems.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we'll continue this next week. If you're watching this during the week, go ahead and jump into the comments on Facebook, onto the YouTube page as well, and let us know if you got stuff to add, for next week, and we'd love to hear it. and we'll plan on continuing this topic next week as well. Because I mean, this only benefits the industry. It only benefits consumers, and so there's just no downside if we can push for advances in the industry. So there's just no downside.
Yeah.
We're not trying to make anybody work any harder. We're not trying to make it more difficult. We're trying to make it easier. We're trying to make it just common sense stuff. And so, you keep talking about the water heater. I have always lived in a home with a direct vent water heater until I moved into this house, and I'm trying to understand why I have a chimney coming off of my water heater that's open air in between the water heater and the chimney, so the carbon monoxide is supposed to just magically go up into that and then follow and then go up past my chimney. And if that thing gets, I mean, I got kids throwing footballs in my basement, they could hit that thing. Yeah. And I wouldn't know. I mean, obviously I've got carbon monoxide testers, but yeah, I like the idea that we're looking at this, how do we get a radon detection system? Maybe it's first alert. Maybe it's the manufacturers of the carbon monoxide smoke detectors also getting, radon built in. That's something that they stand to benefit from. But it's also, if you get it into the code, where you've got to have a smoke alarm, a carbon monoxide, and a radon test in your house. Now, yeah, I mean, my wife just closed on a house, and the only thing that the inspection said had to be done didn't have a carbon monoxide tester. Like, such a simple thing, right? The roof is fine, the windows are fine, but it needed a carbon monoxide tester in order to for an FHA loan. So just add radon test. It's been tested for radon. So yeah.
Well, good point, Ben. I'd like to leave with one last point. Ben said something about throwing a football. My grandsons are big soccer players, and they have a soccer area in their basement with plywood on the walls that I help install so they could practice their soccer at any time. But let me ask you guys this, and ladies, this before we hang up and have a good Father's Day weekend. If you were kicking a soccer ball in the basement, do you think if you kicked it against a radon fan, would it withstand the soccer ball better than the flue for a hot water heater? Or not?
My flue, I don't think I could walk past it and it's not going to fall apart. It literally is dripping water when it rains a certain direction, goes all the way down into my basement. So
right.
yeah, compared to
and the newer style hot water heaters and furnaces, we do know are direct vented, but that doesn't account for older homes, and it also represents the fact that for, I don't know, 60s, 70s, maybe even more years, we had carbon monoxide that had to go up that little pipe on a rotted out hot water heater. And I still say, kick a soccer ball against a radon fan and then kick it against a hot water heater flue pipe and tell me which one breaks and which one don't. And I'll bet you $5 on the answer. So anyway, everybody have a nice Father's Day weekend, and thanks for participating.
Yep. We will see you next week. Thanks, guys. Bye.
See you later.